Dune 2021 is a movie that is directed by Denis Villeneuve. And I am a fan of Denis Villeneuve's movies. I would say that he is one of my favorite directors of all time. The first movie that I saw of his was Prisoners, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Hugh Jackman. And I love that movie. Prisoners is an excellent drama film, crime thriller. That's when I first caught wind of him, and I was like, okay, this is a director to keep an eye out for. Then he did another movie called Enemy with Jake Gyllenhaal that is a superb psychological thriller. I thought that movie was fantastic, and that made me really pay attention to Denis Villeneuve as a filmmaker. Then he did Sicario, which I was just like, okay, whatever this dude comes out with, I'm going to watch. Now, Sicario, for me, was a bit of a hit and miss. I loved the movie, but at the same time, I thought, the stuff that was happening in it towards the end really threw me off a little bit. And I ended up being a bit disappointed with that movie, but I was just like, it's still good. He still has his visual flair and an eye for getting great actors in his pictures and everything. So I was satisfied with that, but I was a bit disappointed. Then he did Arrival with Forest Whitaker, Jeremy Renner, and Amy Adams. And Arrival for me was the same thing as Sicario, maybe just a bit more elevated, because with Arrival, Denis Villeneuve, there's no denying that Denis Villeneuve is a fantastic visual filmmaker. He has an eye for capturing people's imaginations. He has an eye for just putting all of this visual flair on screen to the point where it's just like a visual orgasm. It's just his visual nature, the visual nature that he captures in his movies are just beyond phenomenal. So with Arrival, I was like, yeah, the story is interesting, the visuals are always fantastic, the acting's superb, but then the elements that happen towards the end and stuff kind of throw me off a bit. Then he did Blade Runner 2049. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the Blade Runner franchise, the Harrison Ford movie. I've watched bits and pieces of it, but I can never make it all the way through. But I was like, anything Denis Villeneuve comes out with, I'm watching it. So he did Blade Runner 2049. And that movie, to me, is a bit of a hit and miss as well, more so than Sicario for me, and more so than Arrival, because Blade Runner 2049 is visuals are great, acting is great, but then it just kind of feels I don't know, this, I don't want to say gimmicky, not gimmicky, but it's just kind of, I don't know. I really wasn't a huge fan of Blade Runner 2049. But Denis Villeneuve, whatever he does, I'm there. So when Dune was announced, I was like, I don't know what Dune is. I have not read the novels. I don't know anything about this. I've seen people online praise Dune. There have been other Dune adaptations, I think by David Lynch and some other people. I have not seen that stuff. So I was going into this movie completely blind, just knowing that, hey, Denis Villeneuve is a fantastic director, and this is a star-studded cast. The cast in this movie is bonkers. He got an ensemble cast for this movie. Just looking at the cast list on my phone, because I can't keep track of all this stuff. We have Timothy, I'm probably butchering these names, I'm sorry. We have Timothée Chalamet in here, who is I want to say an up-and-coming young actor. He was in that one movie, I forgot what it's called, Love Me By Your Name, which got a lot of praise. Then we have Zendaya, who's currently in the Spider-Man franchise. We have Rebecca Ferguson, who's in everything. We have Oscar Isaac, who played Apocalypse in X-Men Apocalypse, and then he's been doing movies. He recently just came out with The Card Counter. We have Jason Momoa, who's Aquaman. He's in here. We have Javier Bardem, who is everywhere. We have Stellan Skarsgård, who's currently in the MCU in the Thor movies. So there's a huge ensemble cast here. So I was I'm impressed that he got all these actors together. And just not knowing anything about Dune, I was skeptical, but I was like, it's Denis Villeneuve. I'm watching this. So jumping right into it, Dune 2021. I'm gonna say this off the bat because it starts at the beginning of the movie. I had no idea that this was a part one to a two-part, probably a trilogy most likely, but I had no idea this was a part one, to a franchise that Denis Villeneuve is going to create. And apparently Dune Part 2 is coming out in 2023, which sucks. Because my thing is like, okay, as soon as this movie started, I'm like, all right, it's just called Dune. All right, it's 2 hours and 35 minutes. And I'm just expecting a very long story, learning about all of these characters and the different planets, like something like Star Wars, but more expansive. And so when it started, it said Dune Part 1. And as soon as it said Dune Part 1, I threw my hands in the air and I was like, come on, man, really? Like, I had a feeling that this was going to be a trilogy or something because it's Dune, it's this huge thing. But I was just like, come on, man, like, just give me a straightforward story. Give me everything I need in this one movie so it can just be like a beginning and ending film to where it's like, it doesn't end on a cliffhanger. It's just like, okay, it's a condensed story. And you do part 2 and do its own condensed story. That's why I love movies so much, because they have condensed stories where I don't watch television. I stopped watching television after The Walking Dead because I was like, this just goes on forever. I don't watch TV shows. It just goes on and on. So I love movies because there's a beginning, middle, and an end. And with this, when I saw that part 1 on the title, I was just like, all right, here we go. But whatever, I'm game. Let's see what happens. So it starts, and we learn about all of these different tribes and these planets and these cultures, and I'm just like, this goes way over my head. And I can't remember any of these people's names, but from what I got from the story is that there is this planet where there is this spice that is being collected, and the spice on this planet is being collected because it's like it's the most precious thing in the galaxy. It can help interstellar travel, and people travel from planet to planet, so it's just like people are just going to this planet trying to take all of this spice, is what I'm assuming, what I'm getting from the story. And then there's like this emperor who's in control of all of this spice, but then there's this like tribe that comes to the planet to take the spice, and they're getting wealthy off of it. But then you have the tribe that's on this planet called the Freemen, who are trying to fight back from these people taking all of the spice off the planet, because I guess the people who are harvesting the spice are enslaving the Freemen or something like that, or they're just like, they're not treating their tribe very well. They're just like coming to this planet, wrecking havoc, taking the spice, and not caring about the people that live on that planet. And then the whatever, like Dave Bautista's part of this one tribe. I don't remember the tribe's name because, like I said, I don't know anything about Dune. But you got Dave Bautista here, and he's part of the tribe that's stealing this or taking the spice. And then the Freemen fight back, and then that Dave Bautista's tribe end up leaving that planet, and now the spice is just open for free range. And then we have Oscar Isaac and his tribe, the Arthedes, I think it's called, and his son Timothée Chalamet is going to take his father's place. Like, it's in tradition where it's like, as a young child, your father is the ruler, and then when your father is done ruling, then the child takes the father's place, and it moves on from generation to generation. And Timothée Chalamet, he doesn't want to rule. He doesn't want to take his father's place. And Oscar Isaac understands that because he's like, I didn't want to do that either. But then I guess this emperor is like, okay, so your family can go to this planet and take control of the spice. And Oscar Isaac's plan is like, well, I'm not going to do what that other tribe did, enslaving the people and forcing them into hard labor and all this kind of stuff. He's like, I want to get to know the community. I want to accept them as, our brothers in arms and whatever. So he wants to do it a different way. And he knows that he's going into a planet where it's like, the resources are not as good as the planet that he was on. He could be falling into a trap or something, but he's like, he says this one speech in the movie to Timothée Chalamet where he's like, we've ruled this land and the soil and whatever, and now we can rule, the the spice or something like that. I can't remember the entire line, but he's coming up with a reason for why he's doing what he's doing about taking his family and moving to this completely other planet, where it's like, bro, the planet you were on was way better than the planet that you're moving to. It's like, once they move to this planet where the spice is, there's like all this sand and dust, and then they're like, you need to wear these suits to be able to even walk around and stuff, because you'll suffocate and whatnot. And it's just like, bro, you were better off where you were. I don't know why you did this. Or like, but the spice though is like the biggest deal in the entire universe, where you can become extremely wealthy. So it's like, all right, it makes sense. So then, they go to this planet, and they meet the Freemen, and then we learn about the different elements on the planet. Like, there are these worms, these giant worms that just suck up everything, and they're like humongous. And there's like this intense scene where this spice machine that collects all the spice is about to be attacked by this worm, and then and then Oscar Isaac's character's like, we need to save these people and stuff. And so there's like a lot of intense action in here. The visuals are phenomenal, as always, with a Denis Villeneuve movie, and the acting is great. But the only negative thing I can come up with of having this ensemble cast, because we have a lot of phenomenal actors in here, like Josh Brolin. Josh Brolin is in here, and him as Thanos, but he, we get more time with Timothée Chalamet's character because he's the main focal point. But then we meet Oscar Isaac, who has a place in the movie. I really enjoyed Jason Momoa here. I thought he had a lot of screen time, and as the movie progresses with his character, I care about him more and more, because he has that solid connection with Timothée Chalamet's character. But like, Josh Brolin, like, he's here and he shows up and he has a character, and he's like physically training Timothée Chalamet for like what's to come. He's like, you need to be prepared in battle, you need to be ready when the time arises, and all this kind of stuff. And Timothée Chalamet is just kind of dreading all that. But the negative thing is, it's like, you got all of these cast of characters. I do feel that they got a significant amount of screen time, but then when something happens to them, I kind of don't care, because it's just like, I feel like we got enough, but there could have been more with it. There could have been more development with these characters and establishing who they were as people. Like, I understand Josh Brolin, he's like this warrior, and he's like the first in charge when they have to go into battle or something, and then he's training Timothée Chalamet, and Oscar Isaac is the ruler, and he's head of the throne, and you have Jason Momoa, who's like this foot soldier and stuff, and he's loyal to the family and everything. And then Javier Bardem comes in, and he's part of the Freemen, and they're just like a group of warriors who are trying to protect their planet and everything. And then we have Stellan Skarsgård, who is this weird looking character, who is like, he has this one weird scene where he's sitting in this chair, and he's like this overweight guy, and then when he sits up from his chair, it's like he starts floating in the air, and I'm like, this guy looks like he's 100 feet tall or something. So it's like, you meet all these different tribes and all these different people, and they all have their own unique traits. Like, when we see Stellan Skarsgård and Dave Bautista's tribe, it's like they have like this pale face, and they have this language that is different. And the thing that I enjoyed about this is that when we go to these different planets and meet all these different tribes, they do have their own unique presence. They have their own like language or their own appearance and stuff, so you can easily distinguish the different tribes, even if you don't remember their names. Like, I don't. Like I said, I know nothing about this, but I was intrigued. I was intrigued, and once I saw what was happening on screen and how it was executed and letting all of this stuff breathe, I was invested. I was invested in the story and its progression and the characters. But then there's this weird thing where at the beginning of the movie, we meet Zendaya's character, and she's part of the Freemen, and she's doing this voiceover, which I'm like, okay, like, all right, I guess. But then she's explaining, like, okay, Dave Bautista and Stellan Skarsgård's tribe, and how they're taking all this spice, and they're becoming more wealthier than the Emperor and this and that. And then we meet Zendaya's character for like 2 seconds, and then Timothée Chalamet's having all of these visions about her, And I'm like, okay, what's the deal with her? Why is she so important? They never met before. How is he even getting to know what she looks like? But then Timothée Chalamet has like these powers or something where he can like see the future or something like that. And he's supposed to be the chosen one or something. They keep saying, you're the chosen one, whatever. And then it's like, okay, we don't see Zendaya for a big chunk of the movie. And then by like the very end, I'm like looking at the clock and I'm like, there's like 30 minutes left and we finally meet her, but we learn nothing about her. So I throw my hands in the air and I'm like, okay, there's 30 minutes left. You're not explaining anything about her. I know nothing about her. Why did you introduce her at the very beginning? I was like, it makes sense because it's explaining this universe. But I'm like, for someone like myself who's coming into this cold, who hasn't read the books, who knows nothing about any of this stuff, for someone like myself, it's like they explain it to the point where I can pretty much understand it, but I have no idea. I know what's going on, but I don't have a clear knowledge of the lineage and the history of these characters and their relationships amongst each other or whatnot, if that makes any sense. And so I was a bit confused. It was easy to follow, but I was still a bit confused with the narrative of the story. So when we meet Zendaya, I'm just like, I know nothing about her. Why is she important? And then the thing that really frustrated me was that, from at the very beginning, I was kind of rolling my eyes a little bit, like, okay. And then, once we meet Timothée Chalamet's character and the story starts to get going, that's when I was invested. I was like glued to the screen. I was like, the action scenes are intense. Timothée training, for battle and him learning about the planet and all that was interesting. And, Oscar Isaac and his family moving from one planet.
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Hey, did you hear the one about the guy who goes to the psychiatrist? He's having these weird dreams. Last night it was a wigwam, the night before it was a teepee.
Isaac and his character. And then Oscar Isaac and his character moving, his family from one planet to another because of resources made sense. And, the Freemen fighting for, their lives and stuff. And people collecting the spice and all that because it's the most precious thing in the entire galaxy or universe made sense. But then once it reached the end portion of the film where we finally meet Zendaya and her tribe, I was just like, there's only 30 minutes left. Like, what are you doing? And then, for me, it just kind of abruptly ends. Not really. I feel like this movie, not a person like myself, not knowing what any of this stuff is, but being very intrigued by watching this and wanting to like read the book after viewing this movie to know more information. I feel that this movie just barely scratched the surface. I feel like there is way more information that this movie did not deliver. I feel like this is just barely scratching the surface, but like I said, I'm intrigued enough to where I want to know more. I'm like, I want to read the book, man, because I'm like, this is so much information here. And I was very interested in it. And, by the end, it just ends on a cliffhanger, which is very frustrating to me. Like I said, I really enjoy movies that are just condensed, where it's like there's a beginning, there's a middle, and an end. You can leave room open for a sequel or a trilogy, but I feel like with this one movie, it's like there's never a guarantee. Like look at Mortal Kombat 2021. It's like, I was excited about that. A lot of people were excited about that. And from what I understand, that movie didn't get a really good reception. So you're going to leave all this stuff up in the air and not explain everything. You're just going to give us a taste and be like, well, here's what's to come next. And it's like, but if your movie doesn't make a lot of money and if it doesn't break even or if it doesn't, make its money back, then we're never going to get a sequel. Like, I can't remember movies off the top of my head that did that, but there are movies that I have seen where they leave the first movie and a lot of things up in the air, but they never have a sequel. They just completely reboot everything. So it's like, there's never a guarantee for a part 2. Even though this did make its money back and it made a lot of money, there will be a part 2, but not until 2023, which I think is lame. But it's just like, it's like, come on, man, like, give me everything I want in this one movie. Tell a condensed story, a linear story, and then you can have more surprises in the sequel where it's like, okay, here are these revelations and stuff like that. But just like ending the movie on a cliffhanger and just being like, hey, there's going to be a part 2 and you'll get to know more about the Zendaya character in that movie, since the movie's introducing her at the very beginning here, but then she disappears for a big chunk of the movie until the very end, and they still don't explain anything about her and her importance to this story. So it's just a little frustrating. It's very frustrating. It's a very frustrating thing. I don't like movies that do that. You know, I don't like movies that just end on a complete cliffhanger where it's like, wait for part 2. Even, like, I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, so I'm going to put it right here. If you don't want to be spoiled. But it's like, at the very end of this movie, Zendaya looks at the camera, and she says, this is only the beginning. And then as soon as it cut to black after that, I was just very frustrated. I was so frustrated. I was like, really? Like, come on, man. Like, I don't want to wait 2 years to know the importance of her character and what this is all about, you know? Like, come on, man. Like, but other than that, I was very intrigued by this movie. I was interested in the characters and their story and their progressions. The visuals are absolutely breathtaking. Like, this is a very ambitious, visually impressive movie. Like, the scope of this is just wild. Like, we've come a far way in technical advancements in technology and cinema and visual effects and CGI and all that kind of stuff. Like, you're looking at a completely CGI screen, like the ships and all these devices and stuff. Yeah, it's CGI, but it looks real. It's like, holy shit. It's like, did they actually go to this planet and film this? That's how real it looks. So it's very impressive, as always. Denis Villeneuve is just like an impressive filmmaker. And with this, yeah, I would say that overall, this is a great movie. It's a great movie, minus its shortcomings of like being part 1 in a trilogy or just, you know, a 2-part series. I do feel like, you know, a person not reading the books going into this blind, I was kind of confused. Some of this stuff did kind of go over my head, but the story is I don't know what the correct wording is, but I think the story is linear enough to where an individual like myself who knows nothing about this could easily follow along and learn what's happening and learn how all of these characters operate. So I thought that was interesting. Like, this is a great movie. Visually, acting, story-wise, the, you know, narrative, the scope of it, everything is phenomenal. It's just, you know, it's phenomenal. But the only thing that bothers me is that you gotta wait 2 years to know more about this. But I guess that's good because it makes, if you're interested enough like myself, it will make you want to read the books, you know, so I guess there's that. But yeah, I'm just disappointed that, you know, it ended on a cliffhanger and you gotta wait 2 years to know more about this. That's what sucks. I was like, I wish it was just more condensed. That's really my only problem. I just wish that the story was more condensed. And it was a beginning, middle, and an end where it's like, okay, it ends on a solid note. You don't have to do a sequel if you don't want to, but you can. I like endings like that. I don't like cliff-hanging endings, you know? Where it's like, you can look at me and you can say, well, you know, Avengers Infinity War had a cliffhanger. And I don't think it did. Avengers Infinity War is just like Thanos' story. In that movie, you could end the entire series on Infinity War. It's like Thanos won, he escaped, and it's over. That's not a cliffhanger to me. You know, you can say the original Halloween 1978 is a cliffhanger, but it's not. It's just he's gone and that's it. You can say Halloween Kills is a cliffhanger, but it's not. He you know, it's like something where they look bluntly at the camera and they're like, this is only the beginning. I don't like that. I don't like that. It's like, come on, bro. You know there's more to this story than what you're telling me. Because all of the flashbacks or the visions that Timothée Chalamet's character had, then introducing this character who we know nothing about, and then he's seeing all these visions of her, and then at the end you see her and they still don't explain anything of what her or why she's important. You know, you'll just have to wait for the sequel, which is, it sucks. It's that I don't like that, but it's a great movie. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it makes me want to read the books. Like I said, I enjoyed it. It was a great movie all the way around, besides the beginning and the ending. But the whole middle portion of the movie was fantastic. Yeah, the beginning was kind of and then the middle portion I was like, I was invested, and then the ending was just like, kind of, come on, man. I'm gonna watch part 2, but come on, man. Like, you didn't have to end it like that. But I enjoyed this movie. This is a great movie. That's all I have to say.